Aloha, people. Hi.
Good morning or
What's
good afternoon,
good?
actually, or maybe good evening, depending on
Good
where everyone
morning.
is.
Let's just get it straight. It's mad morning. Eden just sent me this funny thing on IG, and it's a lady like giving the talk about checking your emails before you drink your coffee, and you'll find out that you have a better. And it cuts her off, and there's a dude typing, going, "Listen here, mother," and I was like, "Yes, that guy, that guy, that's the one." So.
Absolutely, absolutely. Love it.
Thanks, Rich. Thanks, Rich. Actually, as you know, Katie and I are leaving in like a couple of days, so I started packing already, and I packed my in ears away, knowing I knew exactly where one of my other three pairs are, just like Katie, and I have none of them. And
Yeah,
same with
I
Katie.
will say, I think it was a couple weeks ago now, but a couple weeks ago I had Homesick Mac Dragon, his name is, on Meet the Fam, and he had this like super detailed inventory list of everything that he had in his studio space and like where it was and what the cost was. So I've been spending all morning going through like everything we have here in the space to start the inventory process. I'm going to take little photos. I'm going to be organized. So when
Nice.
it's
You know
like
what's
this,
funny?
I don't know what's in our like on location bag versus in the studio space. It's going to be fantastic.
I just happened to yesterday start making a Notion sheet for
Ooh,
packing all the tech stuff
there you go.
because I always just do it off of the spreadsheet that you make or something. But what was cool is when I started making the sheet, I even put like which bag it's in. Because one of the things that we always do, Luis will contest to, is we open all the bags looking for the one adapter. And it's like it's in the last bag you open naturally, not in the sense that if you found it, you'd keep looking, but it just so happens if you have 5 bags, it'll be in bag number 5 when you get there.
Yeah,
So yeah,
yeah.
and I didn't think about the pictures part. Oh, now I got to go back and think about it for that.
Yeah, yeah. We'll have to merge our sheets together, but I was trying to think through everything we needed to know, and I was like, okay, where is it? What is it? How do you use it? What is the category? A little bit
And
of all those.
you're making it in ClickUp.
Yeah, I'm making it ClickUp. Yeah, I'll share with you.
Nice, nice.
Yeah.
I was
Share
I
with
was I was gonna say
people around.
I wish I could just
Tell
call
me.
Kat and be like, Kat, how do you do this?
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
the Notion queen.
Yeah, Kat is the Kat actually, we spent time talking with her, and she helped us figure out how to get organized. So if you're looking to get organized, she is absolutely the person to talk to.
That is awesome. Okay, gang. Today we're gonna dive into talking about sweetening your audio or making your audio better for your streams, for your podcasts, things of this nature. So we will get into that in just a second. Just a quick reminder: if you haven't done so already, please pop over to the old Apple Podcast getting spot, left a review. If you enjoy this, if make sure you share it with somebody who needs to know this information, because nothing is better than keeping information to yourself.
Don't be a jerk. Share with someone else.
There you go. Exactly. All right, and yeah, any other cool announcements? Oh, camp, yes, camp
Yeah,
people,
please. We have
please.
um 15, I think. Maybe it's 12, somewhere in there. Between 10 and 20 spots left for Creator Camp. So if you're sitting there thinking about it, don't keep thinking about it. Just go and register today. Otherwise, someone else will grab your spot and we'll all be in tears that you're not here hanging out with us. So
All the thoughts, yes, all the thoughts. Okay, so other than that, yeah, I guess we can get started. Do the little, shake it out, get ready. Yes, folks, and as Rich already pointed out today, I am wearing my cans. Yeah,
we're
so
talking audio today, so it seems
uh,
appropriate.
it's going to be even better sounding here. Let me just open up the YouTube real quick so that I can see us in both places. I don't know why it serves zero purpose whatsoever, but I just do.
Just in case. Just in case.
I'm just that weirdo. All right. I am ready, and let's breathe it out and count this baby down. Oh, I know why it's weird. I don't have you sitting here because my monitor is over here. I don't have an adapter for my new lens. Okay. Anyway, counting it down in 5, 4. Aloha, Flow Riders. Welcome to the Flow. I'm your community manager from Ecamm, Doc Rock, along with my awesome co-hosts.
Hey everyone, it's Katie.
It's KD. All right, gang, let's get into it. Today, we're going to be talking about how to make your audio sound better.
Mhm.
So I must posit the question, Kate. What made you come up with this question? And I have a funny answer according to whatever you say.
Oh my gosh. Well, for a few reasons. One, it's the most popular question that we hear from Ecamm fam and podcasters and video professionals and live streamers. And I think it's always the most important part of all of this is the audio, because we keep saying to everyone that people will put up with really terrible video quality, but if they can't hear you, they're gone. Like no one's gonna sit through if there's like
Yeah,
noises or if they can't hear you at all. So, and it was really
absolutely.
fun because I had the pleasure of doing a podcasting workshop with a whole bunch of seventh graders last week, which is why I apologize. We were off last week as I was teaching people about podcasting, but that was one of the questions that I got the pleasure of asking them, and I felt so smart. I was like, "Hey, go. What's the most important aspect of podcasting? Is it the camera? Is it the microphone? Is it the lighting? Is it the person? What is it?" So yeah, that would be my answer.
Well, sorry, Hiccup. The reason why I said that was kind of funny is because we did stream last week, and when it was done, we were hanging out in the Discord
Mhm.
and basically going over Tatiana's mic setup. And
Mm,
so we went through setting up her MV7 from top to bottom
yep.
because she didn't know what many of the words were.
Yeah.
And it's the thing that's so, I guess, timely about that is I was just watching a video about someone stating that even the simplest things that are just so normal to you, you would be surprised that people wouldn't know.
Mm.
And I I I thought we were closer in the same generation, but I guess there's a big enough gap. Like she didn't even know what EQ was. And I was like, what are you talking about, Willis? Because we grew up, and maybe you too, actually, because you didn't talk to your closer. Everybody in their car or in their house, they had the EQ with the actual sliders, right? So, your dad or your grandpa or somebody was always sliding the little sliders up and down. And then it was like, if you kids touch that, I would take you out of this world. So nobody touch it. And me, I was like, look,
I
the
don't
boomy
think I did
parts get better.
I know I feel like I know what EQ is, but I don't think I could explain it. So maybe I'm in between. I didn't grow up with that experience, but I know, like, I recognize the term, but I couldn't tell you exactly what it means.
Okay, so here's a different question. In Canada, was booming in your Jeep a thing? Like in US, especially New York, California, like Hawaii, um, like the everybody in high school, the cool kids was about the car stereo, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like we even
Sure.
had whole songs about, the bass in your trunk or booming in your Jeep or, you
Yep.
know, I'm too short
Yep.
from the home of the rock, two woofers in the trunk beating down the block. Life is too short. Like that was a thing. So yeah, again, Rich said they booming the sleds in Canada.
Toboggans. Total toboggans.
It's a toboggan. Okay, so no, so I was just wondering because yeah, then in that case, it's again a term that everybody hears but doesn't necessarily know. Luis.
Yeah, okay, good. I was like, "Is this just me
Okay,
that's Okay,
all
good.
right, let me run that back for a second. Okay, so it's a term that people know, but just hearing it doesn't mean they know what it means. Okay, so here's the best thing about audio. I just wanted to get a level set. That's the term, right? I want to get a level set because yeah, I was not like astonished, but I was like, really? Like, really did assume that everybody would just know what EQ is. It's in all your TVs, right? It's in your car stereo you have right now.
Mhm.
It's been in iTunes since day one. Like, and at least if you grew up in iTunes, there was a your phone apps talk about it. Half of your microphones, if you buy a microphone for your phone, like Shure MV88, the app has it in there. So yeah, most of our apps have it built in. We don't, but yes, it's because we're assuming that you're doing that already from your mic. So let's cover some of that. Making your audio sounds better starts with, first of all, it really does start with your mic selection.
Mhm.
Um, this is the tough one because we always tell everybody, look, we want you to get in where you fit in, like start where you start, right? And a lot of people don't want to hear that they probably need to change their mic, right? But
Well,
then we get go ahead.
I would start where you start, but I would say we also say all the time that the first thing you should be upgrading or saving up for, or the first thing kind of on your budget list, even as video people, is still a better microphone than what's built into your, headphones, your computer, like not something that's built in, an actual
Right.
microphone. Whether that's a USB microphone or an XLR, or like the Shure MV7 is a bit of both,
Right.
but definitely, that's the first thing you should be spending money on as far
Well,
as
and again, if you
going.
want the budget option that sounds absolutely amazing, the Samsung Q2U, it
Yep.
is 50 freaking dollars, period. And it will sound fan glorious. It
Mhm.
will sound quite amazing for 50 bucks. So I think when we tell people that they got to save up for, which, here's the other thing, right? I'm just a beginner, so I'm just going to buy this. And I'm starting to push back on that. And the reason for that is number one, microphones for the most part are pretty strong. Like they you have one forever. We have
Yeah.
someone in our community that has the original version of this and they purchased it in 1972 and they still use it to this very day. That's
Oh,
older than Katie by a long shot. See how that's how you get a raise, people.
okay, yeah. I
Right?
know what was happening in the '70s.
Right? So it you don't have to think about I'm gonna buy this, in this particular case, $400 mic and it's only going to last like 2 years and I'm going to switch it. If you buy a junk one, that's exactly what you're going to do. You're going to end up spending $800 trying to get to 400 because you're going
Mhm.
to go to the $100 mic and then you're going to switch it later and bump up to like the 250 mic, right? And then you're going to switch it later and, like, oh, well, this one came out and it's supposed to be as good as the SM7B or the RE20 or the Heel PR40. And so you're going to buy another mic that's like 300 bucks and eventually you will end up here. So everybody ends up here, PR40 or, Electro Voice RE20 or the original Podcaster, all basically $400. So if you could do it, don't put yourself out. Just skip all the rest because you will end up spending more at the end of the day, right? Even just going from one to this, you're already adding at least $100 to what you're going to do. So don't worry about that. But when you can, migrate yourself up. What Katie has is a fantastic middle ground and not a middle ground where you will be losing anything. It is a fantastic middle ground where you can just move in and stay. Right. Like that's where I'm going to get this 1 bedroom studio in the middle of Manhattan and I'm never leaving. No house, no grass. I'm just
Yeah.
going to get this. That's perfectly fine place to start. And it's like 250 and that's the Shure MV7. So
It's also, like, really portable, and I know people are gonna be
yeah.
like, "I roll," but, like, I'm constantly going back and forth between the studio here and home and the office we have in North Andover and traveling out to shows and events and things. I literally throw one of these in my bag with me that, like, I take back and forth, and it's so easy, and it's
Yes.
fairly durable. I mean, I'm obviously careful with it, but it's not like I'm literally just like folding down the stand flat, dropping it into the bag and bringing it with me back and forth all over the place.
Shure
And it
products are
works
pretty
well.
durable.
Yep.
100%. And the one thing that hopefully they will do a Rev 2 pretty soon and swap out the micro USB for a USB-C.
Mm,
Just it came about, the design phase came about during a time where it was still either or, and now it should just be C, period. So hopefully they'll update it soon. But yeah, that's a good jumping off point. Now, after we've done that, let's get into something that I want to explain to people. And this was something that I forgot to mention when I was talking to Tati, and I don't even think she's here right now. But
mm,
I've said this on my streams, I've taught this to people in my class. Do not get discouraged by audio terms. Okay.
yeah,
These
that's
audio terms, I'm going to let you guys in on a little insider secret. We, audio people slash musicians, we are the people that pretend to be smart, but we're really dense AF. So all audio terms are absolutely literal. I mean, literal to like literal, literal, literal. So it's just funny because every people say to me, "Well, I don't get EQ. What's equalization?" Yeah, that's the description. That's exactly what it is. Oh,
that's fair.
what's a low filter? Yes, exactly that. It filters out the low frequencies. you know, um, what is reflection? Yes, it's that. If you were to sit in your room and you have somebody walk on the side of you with a mirror, okay, like in my room, let me give you a visual, people, even people at home, play along. If I'm sitting in my room and staring at this camera, at 45 degrees from me in two corners, there are my studio monitors. What are studio monitors? They're studio monitors. They monitor your studio, right? So that's how you can hear what's going on in your studio. Okay, so my studio monitors sit right there. If Katie and Luis was to walk on the side of me with a mirror, the minute that looking here, I can see the speaker in the mirror. That's exactly where my speakers reflect against the wall and bounce into my ears because it is sound waves, light waves, microwaves, radio waves, they're all the same wave, just different frequencies. So
Yeah,
they all behave the same way. So if I was to shine a flashlight and hit the mirror, it would land exactly where the speaker are. If I was to shine a laser and hit the mirror, it would land exactly where the speakers are. Turns out the sound wave travels the exact same path because the light wave and the sound wave is the same wave at different frequencies.
yeah,
They're all waves. Like none of this stuff is rocket sciences, but I think that we audio people back in the day, I was one, with the, gaffer's tape and the clippers on the side, pliers and all of that. Someone would be like, hey, my mic disconnected. Don't touch it. I'll plug it in. And we would run over and plug it in. Like anybody that's from a band or worked in a church or a school, the audio people was like, never touch my stuff. We're gonna touch our own. So we built a wall around this stuff, unfortunately, back in the day. And now we suffer for it because we
yeah,
get constant phone calls about something that is exactly what it is. Okay.
yeah. And I think that's a really good point. I think it's one of those things that I've been learning more and more, and I'm now feeling really comfortable with is that in my head, it was this overcomplicated thing where it it was outside my skill set. It was something that I like needed to dive into and learn. And really, so much of it is visual, which it seems counterproductive, but it really is. Like as you're troubleshooting audio problems, it you are literally like looking at your sound meter. Like, and Luis was popping this up earlier because right before I jumped on, I was having weird audio issues because obviously but but you're able to see, you can see where the audio is, you can see where things are plugged into and where they're going to. So it a lot of it is really obvious logic and being able to kind of follow back the path, right? So it is much more visual and straightforward than it often seems or feels. So even if you don't know any of that terminology and you don't have any desire to learn any of it, you can still have good audio for your show. You can still troubleshoot and help guests troubleshoot. You just need to take a deep breath and don't kind of panic at the point where someone says, I can't hear you, or, or you're hearing doubled audio, or you're hearing an echo, or you're panicking. Take a moment and think through bring up your meters, see where the volume is coming or not coming through, and follow that path back to solve it there. And that has been hugely helpful. That mixed with actually blocking off time for a sound or a tech check, but being able to visually see it, I think has just made a huge, huge difference in how I'm able to solve problems. And I don't solve them all the time, but 90% I'm able to solve just by calming myself down and watching what's happening, watching what's happening or not happening. You're like, oh, I don't see the audio bouncing on the interview. So that must mean that it's on their end. It's not, Ecamm isn't seeing it come in from somewhere. So there's something happening, or oh, I do see it, but I don't hear it. So something, is blocked on my end. What's going on?
Okay. Now, so I do want to address something though, real quick. Um, Imagine trying to get a driver's license without learning with gas, brake, stop sign,
Yeah,
signal.
fair,
You
fair.
you have to. Like
Yeah.
I want to take away because this is a common conversation and it's not your fault. So many people do it that it becomes part of the vernacular, but it's a veritable impossibility. If you tell yourself, I don't want to learn that, that is generating the brick that's stopping you because I'm not asking you to become a sound engineer, but you have to understand the basics, right? So there are some terms that you just have to know. You have to know volume, you have to know gain, you have to know EQ. I think
Hmm.
those are must, absolute must, right? I
Hmm.
don't need you to understand frequency response, although that's exactly what it is. How does this microphone respond to frequencies? It is 100% literal. I will say it until I green in the face. So there are some that are so literal. You know, a person that's so literal that when they say what they say, you're kind of confused because it is absolutely literal. That's where people get confused. So, for instance, I'll give you one that you kind of sort of should know. It's nice to know. It's not going to break it if you don't understand this. When you open up your Shure MV7 app, it's called the Motive app. When you go
Hmm.
to setup, there's a setting in there called the high pass filter. When you turn on or adjust the high pass filter, it cuts out some of the lower frequencies.
Hmm.
And you're saying, come here, doc. Listen, you just said that it was literal. So why does the high pass filter cut out the low frequencies? And the Virgo in me, because we're literal, Kate is Virgo, will say because it allows the high frequencies to pass through.
Yeah.
High pass filter.
Mhm.
Okay, Stan, what's a low pass filter? Jesus, it's the same thing. It just allows the low frequencies to pass through. Okay. Now, anybody care to guess what is a high cut filter?
Ooh, high cut filter cuts out the high frequencies?
Yes, it is a low pass filter is also a high cut filter. So you're
There we
correct,
go.
100%. See what I'm saying? They're super literal. They are 100% literal. So that is one that's on the fringe. Like it would be nice for you to know what a carburetor does or a fuel injector does when you drive, but it's not going to stop your ability to drive properly. But not understanding yield, stop, pass, merge, brake, light, red, green, yellow, like those stuff you just can't drive without it. So
Good
this is
point.
some of the audio stuff. You do have to know this EQ. You do have to know the difference between level and gain,
Yeah.
right? And you kind of sort of need to know what a compressor is. So we'll cover those. There was a question that came up in the chat, and it's funny because not really Q&A time yet, but I'll answer it because it's actually a good question. It's
Mhm.
like, so what's a gate? Yes, it's exactly that. It says, so what's a gate? And please, what's the difference between the volume and the gain?
Yep.
Okay, so a gate is exactly that. You put these things in your kitchen to stop your youngin from crawling into the kitchen before they could walk, right?
Mhm.
In your house, you possibly have a chain link fence to stop people like me and Louise from showing up to your house and taking all your stuff. I'm joking. So that's what a gate is. So what would you suppose a noise gate is?
Keeps the
It's
noise out.
bingo, bango, pickled mango, show's over. I'm going back to bed. That's exactly what a noise gate is,
Yep.
right? So if you have, or like I want to get too technical, but I know Dragon's here, so I'll explain it because Dragon's going to be mad at me. When you hear somebody had a gated snare, they put a gate on the snare frequencies. When you hit a snare, there's an X amount of frequencies that come out. But if you can block certain frequencies, like you block some of the high filter frequencies, you get that 1980s when instead of a right, it's lower because you gated the high frequencies and you have a gated snare.
This is just magic. And I do wanna call out this particular comment from Jeremy because I think this is what I should have gotten to but didn't, is you don't need to know what everything means, although Doc has just proven that it's all fairly obvious, but being able to get those words and those terms so that you're able to look up more information is also incredibly helpful, right? So knowing the
100%.
technology helps you to troubleshoot, helps you to be able to ask the right questions, helps you be able to look up the right YouTube videos to get the help that you need. So, yeah, it's not you don't need to know everything, but you need there's some level of logic
There's
to it
some
to be able
basics
to
that you need to know.
help.
I liken it to this. If you have no problems with your blood sugar, then you don't need to know what is an A1C, or you don't need to know what a glucose is. But if
Mhm,
you're pre-diabetic or diabetic, you absolutely have to know. Well,
mhm.
in this particular case, as a podcaster, there's some of the basics you're going to have to know, because when you go to speak to someone who's trying to help you, if you
Yeah.
can't posit your question in a proper, way, for instance, to me, I'm not trying to be a smart aleck. Every time somebody says to me, "How do I get rid of the echo in my sound?" I'm like, "Turn off the processor."
Mhm.
Because what you guys are calling double audio or slapback or some other terminologies, that's not echo. An echo
Oh,
is
no.
when a frequency reflects off of surfaces until it fades away, right? What you guys are hearing is your input coming back through your headphones twice. That's
Yeah.
not echo. So to me, if you want to stop the echo, turn off the processor. There's an echo processor. Software doesn't know how to generate echo by itself. The
Mhm.
only way for you to get an echo is for you, human, to feed yourself two audio sources into your same ear. Ecamm doesn't have that, and I'll go ahead and say neither does OBS or any of them. Oh, I can't even think of our other friends. Restream, StreamYard, like nobody has a button that says echo. It just doesn't exist, right? Your DAW has one, because why? That's a processor that says take the wave and bounce the wave back and forth until it fades off.
Mhm.
That's actual echo. So to me, yeah, I mean, we're going to be literal about it, and then boom. So let's see. Uh, Not really a question, but Martin said I was on the Ecamm group interview with the guest, and embarrassingly, my SM7B sound was leaking from a headphone. How do you identify that it was me causing the problem? Super simple. Like, we have visual meters in the software.
Yeah.
Okay,
This
so
for helping with visual meters and this, like, actually being able to
there's a
see it.
meters for, and then so if the guest is talking and you can see the meter move on your side, your input meter should be still. If your meter is bouncing while the guest is talking, the guest audio is leaking through. If you are listening to, like, you say something to the guest and like a split seconds later you can hear the tail end of your word again, then quite literally maybe your headphone is leaking through. Or if they say something, sorry, rather, and you can hear them bounce again back out the other side, then quite your headphones leaking through. So if you're quiet and they're talking and your meter is moving slightly, that's your headphones leaking. Fulgens was famous for doing this back in the beginning. I should just tease him because the headphones didn't fit, because Fulgens and I have massive heads. So leaky headphones is a problem for those of us with big heads. If you have leaky headphones, you got to go to cans, because this is what these do. They eliminate that process. Yeah, so that one's the easy one. But yeah, you can normally see it visually, really, though. All right, so I wanted to get into volume
Yeah, gain. There's
gain.
mhm.
Okay. So, what is? I'm just curious. Just again, just getting a level set. What would you suppose the difference is?
Volume and gain. I don't know if I know. I don't know if I can hazard a guess, to be honest.
Okay, we're gonna go back to their literal. Okay, so in your audio signal,
Mhm.
let's see. I'll put this in Canadian. This is 600 milliliters.
Mhm.
So the space in beside this bottle is known as the volume.
Okay.
It's how much sound can you fit in your signal?
Okay.
Volume,
Makes sense. Yep.
right?
Mhm.
Now, in order to pick up the signal, I mean, in order to keep the signal level, this is a tube, right?
Mhm.
Well, not if I cut the other ass off, it's a tube. um,
I'm
in
buying it
order
too.
for the sound to come out of this tube, I have to also put sound back in this tube
Mhm.
because if I just let it come out, eventually this is empty, right?
Mhm. Yep.
So volume is the amount of signal I can pass through this tube.
Okay.
Gain is the input that I am putting into this tube. So as a
Okay.
600 milliliter bottle, in order to not make noise on the microphone, I can only let out 450 milliliters at a time. That means I have to equally put in 450 milliliters. Now,
Okay.
let's just say my microphone sucks. So I'm going to actually throw in like 700 milliliters, but I have the flow set on here to only let out 450, right? So the rest would just sort of build up in here and it's fine. And it's coming out. So input is your gain, right? Volume is what comes out,
Okay. Yep.
right?
This is a really good analogy.
Volume is almost always. Some people do label stuff wrong, but that's not our fault. We can't help what companies do. Volume is almost always related to what's coming out, and
Mhm.
gain is what's related to what's coming in. So you have
Okay.
an input gain, and then you have an output volume. A level is basically that filter. Okay,
Mhm.
so going back to my analogy, I said maybe I want to throw like 750 mLs at this,
Okay.
but I'm only going to let 450 come out at a time because that's the volume that YouTube or Apple or Spotify can handle. So I'm going to use the level to adjust the flow between the input gain and the output volume. In your house, when you grab the H and you turn it, if you put a lot of H, you burn the living out of yourself. If you keep the H halfway, then my brain hurts. My brain hurts trying to make it hard because it's not. It is so not hard. you know, it's actually
Mm.
harder for me to make it hard because it's not hard. It is legit stuff you do on a regular basis in other things. If you're trying to get a tepid water mix, you adjust the level of the hot and the level of the cold until you get a perfect tepid,
Mhm.
right? You're down on the bottom that's coming from the outside underneath, right? Your quarter, please have quarter turns, people. If you have more than quarter turns, you're going to flood your house. Please switch them. Your that quarter turn is basically adjusting your gain, and the volume is what comes out the faucet.
Mhm.
Because if the science teacher told you to go take this 600 milliliter volume and fill it up halfway, you would go to the sink and you would open the little thing and you would fill the volume up. So it's output. Yeah. All right, cool. Done. Gangster. What's next on the list? See, this is so simple, but I don't know why people make it hard. I would say it's our fault though. Back in the day when we had opportunity to make this a general portion of conversations, we didn't because we were busy gatekeeping. And that's why no one understands photography in a way. And no one understands because the people who had the skills back in the day were very gatekeepery, and YouTube kind of bust a hole in that.
Yeah.
So now anybody can do it. I think that's the cool part is a level set playing field. Not anybody can do it, but it has made certain things seem daunting, and they're just not. You know.
Yeah. I think, at least for me, and I don't know if this is the same for everyone else, part of what made it difficult was that by and large, even if you're doing a tech check or a sound check, it's those moments where you're with someone else and the audio is either not working at all or doubled, like you're getting some kind of doubled audio. It's hard to talk through and troubleshoot that because the audio isn't working, right? So trying to think through the best way to communicate when you're trying to solve that is also difficult. So I now have like a couple of different things that I do. Like when I join and the audio doesn't work, it's either, we're using like a guest chat or something and typing back and forth. Or what's even better is, I did this for my personal podcast this past week. Nat, my co-host, her microphone wasn't connecting properly. There was some sort of issue. And so I just had her call in with her phone. So it was like she was like, phone guest. That was working. So we knew that it wasn't software and it wasn't on my end. It was something on her end. But being able to actually talk with her while we were troubleshooting what was going on with her microphone made it easier. So I think that's part of it, is that it's not easy to it's an annoying sound or there's no sound, which then makes it difficult to try to talk through and troubleshoot what's going on. So you have to think through, like, how else can you communicate while trying to solve an audio issue, and how can you stay calm if you're running out you're running out of time, or you need to be doing a big production. So I would say, from at least from what I've learned in the last little bit, giving yourself at least 15 minutes, if not 30 minutes of time that's in a tech check to make sure that nothing happens. Being okay that you might be a couple of minutes late, that's better than showing up without good audio or things going wrong. And finding a good way to be able to talk to them. So whether that's you have their phone number, or you have a different line for them to call in at, or you have a way to send a text message or a Slack chat or Facebook DM or something else to be able to talk them through what's going on. Those are all important aspects of this, because it's not as easy as troubleshooting other things from that perspective.
So here's something that is really helpful. I know that Jeremy and Tony and maybe Martin, I'm looking at some of the people in the chat who would probably have a picture like this somewhere in their set. When you purchased a mixer back in the day, right? And now even to this very day, even when you got your Rodecaster Pro, there's a diagram. And in that diagram, you will see there's the mixer. And on the side, there'll be like an icon of a guitar and a cable that comes in and goes in someplace. There'll be an icon of a microphone and a cable. The reason why they do that, even though these are being sold to people who theoretically know what the heck they're doing, is to show you the visual signal flow.
Yep.
If you can't right now, everyone sitting in this chat, and I'm not going to grade you on this, but if you can't sit down right now and draw your finger to your signal, that is going to be the reason why you can't troubleshoot, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I can draw my finger, big ass mouth, SM7B, purple cable, streamer X, signals inside the streamer X, USB cable, Mac, right? And then streamer X, quarter inch cable, headphones. That's the signal flow, right? The streamer X takes it and divides it. It allows me to hear back this, but also send one to the Mac so that Katie and Luis can hear. Yes. So if you can't do that, then you're going to have a problem, because then when someone says, well, hey, I'm hearing Katie's audio twice, all I do in that second is I go, okay, computer coming in to the streamer X, and then, oh, I have Katie's audio coming through the computer into the same Rodecaster Pro, in this case Streamer X, and showing up in Ecamm. So when Katie talks, my main is bouncing. That's not how it works. When Katie talks, only the interview should bounce. Not in this case, because we call Luis. But if Chrome comes into the USB and that USB passes through your interface, back out your interface to your show, that's where you get in the sound. I just take my finger and go like that. Got it. In your house, when you notice water on the floor, every human being has done this. Well, if you haven't, you're lucky to live in nice places your whole life. If you're from the hood, you definitely done this. You walk in the floor, kitchen's wet, you start tracing.
Yeah, you're
Sink
looking at
overflow. Or open the kitchen cabinets, pull all of the crap out, find
Mhm.
out that your sister hid a fifth of vodka in there. Keep that. Don't tell mom. Keep tracing up. Hey, the P trap is leaking. Mom's like, what's a P trap? Never mind. I need $40. I got it. You know what I'm
Yep.
saying? We've all done it before. Like when you're little children and you saw this line of ants, every kid went like this. Oh, look, there's a thing. There's a candy. Somebody dropped a lolly, and all the ants there, and you trace them back to where the hen stay came.
Mhm.
Every kid done it at some point in their life. It's the exact same thing. You
Mhm.
just follow the ants.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. It's that
I
easy.
I just hope I'm helping to like unmystify this craziness because it really does throw people off, right? So here's an easy one. Talk about a great analogy. I can see I spy with my little eye. Victor is talking about how when you crank up the gain, you hear more of the room. Imagine we go back to the faucet analogy. Whenever you have too much signal, what do you hear? That room noise you hear is the same thing as if I cranked up the water, you would hear that sucker. Like if the Hoover Dam did it, you would hear it. Before it got to you in Vegas, you would hear it, right? It's the same thing, right? So when you crank the gain up so high, the microphone is reaching for signal. You can literally hear the air moving around in your room. That's that room noise. And that's the people who through no fault of their own. I'm just going to give you guys all the fault so you can stop worrying about it's your fault, right? Because this is where people get messed up. If you grew up with parents like I had, yeah, you start worrying about everything is your fault. And I get it. I'm sorry. I'm not here to talk to your therapist, but I'm doing science right now. So if the microphone you have, say, can only output 50 decibel signal, right? And your decibel is what we're counting as milliliters today. Okay, people, we're sticking with that. Um, it's a unit of measure. That's all you need to know. And your mixer, say, can only put out, say, 50 as well. You're going to end up cranking your mixer really, really loud, or interface in this particular case, really, really loud. And so it's going to hear that loud air sound that you hear, that and that is because you don't have enough amplification coming in. So it sounds really bad. Um, I don't want to mess with mine. I was going to crank it up for a second, but I won't do that because I'm not. My Rodecaster Pro is faster, but on the Streamer X it's a little bit harder. So when we say, "Oh, you need a cloud lifter," it's just a brand name. That's and why it's a stupid brand name. So that's where people get confused because it's when the most popular item in the mix has a dumb name, that's where people get confused, right? It is a microphone preamp. What does that mean? We're going to pre-amplify the microphone signal before it gets to your interface. Because your interface, in order to get a clean sound, I'm going to adjust my number, needs 75 decibels a gain.
Mhm.
At 75 decibels, that's the high noise. That's if you had nothing connected and you crank the mixer up to 75, it would go with nothing plugged in. So at around 60, it sounds solid. No noise, perfect. The gain is absolutely gorgeous. But your microphone only puts out 50. If you ask the interface to make up the other 25, you get every time you talk, it sounds okay. But as soon as you're silent, because it's trying to make up the rest. So what do? You take a cloud lifter. Sorry. Even people listening at home, I am going to grab a real one.
Old.
Sorry, it's just how you do. So this is a microphone preamp. People, I'm holding a barrel thing that has XLR on either end, and it just looks like a little nothing. But inside here, there's a bunch of circuitry that will take the 50 dB signal and crank it up by 25 dB. That's exactly what this does. This cranks up by 25. Right. So if I plug this on my mic before I plug it in, it could be here or it could be at the opposite end, wherever your cord likes it. So in other words, people at home, you can listen on either end. You can plug it in either end. This
Mhm.
will take that 50 dB signal, crank it up to 75. So now when I hit my Streamer X, I can set it at 60 and I won't be missing that extra 10. And then it's clean as a whistle. So to Victor's point, if you to get his gain at a level that sounds great, maybe he has to crank his, mixer all the way up to the top end. And when you do that, you are interjecting that noise. And so many of the mixers have an extra tick, if either visually in the software or
Mhm.
on the actual mixer itself. They've actually painted the line a wee bit thicker because that's where they want you to put the. If you have to crank it past that, you probably don't have enough input gain. That makes sense?
It
I
does,
just want
yeah.
to. If it's too sciencey, you gotta stop me. I'm trying to make this as simple as possible. Okay, so
No, I actually don't even have any other questions in my head. I'm scrolling through to see if there's anything else that we're missing. I
we got to
honestly
cover
think
EQ
that
though.
we do have to cover EQ. I do think honestly that calming yourself down and practicing and realizing like how it's going in and out of these systems is the most important thing, and the best thing that you can do is just keep doing it. Keep doing it and keep testing it and listening to how it sounds and bringing guests on and having them go through a process. You'll get there and you'll feel much more confident with it.
Listen, if you have a frantic nature because of your parents or whatever, then take yoga or
Yeah.
take martial arts. I have a calm nature because it's martial arts, right? And my whole family is frantic. I'm the only one that's not. I'm not going to say stuff to get me in trouble like I'm the only boy in my family. But anyway, I don't have a frantic nature. I know my sisters got it from my mom, and I know that my mom got it from my grandma and my grandpa, right? So, like, and actually, my uncle, Bob, he's not my mother's brother. His name's not Bob. My uncle was also frantic, but that's just if your parents bred frantic into you, ask your kids, are you frantic? If your kids say yes, then look at your mom and dad and figure out where you got it from, and then take yoga and let it go, Elsa, because that's
Mhm.
not your business. What they did to you is not your business. I don't care how old you are, you can make it stop. I took martial arts as a kid, went into the military after. You can't do frantic in the military, right? As a medic, if I did frantic, people would die. I
Mhm.
can't do frantic. I have to do calm. So if I can put a bandage on your ankle while getting shot at, I can follow a signal and find out where the noise is, right? So yeah, your frantic is taught you. Eden just said in the chat, frantic was taught to her. She took yoga to figure it out. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? Like, so if you have that nature, don't be mad at yourself. Somebody did it to you. You're not, no one's born frantic. This is crazy, not to do with podcasting, but very helpful. People that have frantic dogs, the owners did that to them. Dogs are not frantic by nature. So when you
Mhm.
go to your house and a puppy runs around and jumps on you and bounces down and jumps on you and bounces down and does all of that psycho stuff, that's the owner. That's not the dog. That was bred into the dog. Caesar comes in, psst, and then the dog don't do it no more, like in a half an hour.
So true. Yep.
Right. So yeah, your frantic nature, not my business. Again, not here therapist. I'm just doing sound science today, but you figure that out on your own. Okay, because it doesn't serve you. And what I teach my students in my class, if it doesn't serve you, let it go, Elsa, because it ain't your business. Like
Yeah.
somebody else's things they put on you are not your business. All right. So let's get into EQ. This is kind of important in order to get your sound to sound better. This one is somewhat of a visual class. I am more than happy to go over how to do it in the Discord or something if you guys want to see it. It is something you kind of visually need to see, but I will explain it to you in the basics. I need to pull up an EQ somewhere just so I can have a visual for because the frequency numbers, like I don't want to confuse people. One
Yeah.
of the easiest one
In
to
the
get your
Discord.
yeah,
Discord, it's
yeah,
ecamm.tv/discord is where you can jump in. Yep. Sorry, go ahead, Doc.
one of the ones that can probably help you understand this the most while you're doing nothing is either in your phone or on your computer. Open up the not iTunes Music. It's just called Music nowadays. Just do
Mhm.
yourself a favor. Open up the Music app. At the very top, there is an equalizer. Right? It's Command Option E. Right? That will open up an equalizer for you. In that equalizer, you will see a bunch of stuff. Now, I have a manual EQ already set up on my stuff because I just know how bad this thing is at frequencies. So I've had this set. I had an article on my blog back when I was a nerd, and one of the most popular articles that I ever wrote was about the perfect iTunes EQ preset because based off the speakers that were in our computer, based off of, just having crappy Logitech speakers or whatever, if you would set this to your Apple Music at that day, Cassidy and Green, iTunes level, it would sound good, even if you had junk speakers, because, I already knew this frequency stuff was. So that is a good way for you to take song that you know really, really well, whatever it is, right? It could be, a nocturne from Chopin, right? There you go, Eden. Just put it right
Mhm.
there. Grab the 32 megahertz frequency and sorry, kilohertz, my brain is going to hurt. And just raise it up and down. Hear the changes as it's doing. Slide over to the 64, raise it up and down so you can hear what it's doing. Go through that entire suite, right? 32, 64, 125, 250, 500, 1K, 2K, 4K, 8K, 16K. Your
Mhm.
human ears can hear theoretically between 20,000 and 20. So you can hear between 20 and 20,000. Most of us, after we get to a certain age, we start to roll off some of the bass parts we can't hear no more, some of the high parts we can't hear no more. So I tend to EQ visually because I know that I am past my ear has perfect listening. I am amazed at how many old audio engineers still swear that they hear all of these. I'm like, no, you can't, bro. Scientifically, you can't. I don't care what you think. Your brain doesn't do that. Those frequencies go away at a certain age, but with enough experience, you can compensate. So, the reason why I want you to go through that exercise, as simple as it may sound, is it will allow you to understand what these frequencies are. Okay. So if you're listening to your sounds and you can hear a loud O, like your sound, it sounds like, oh, that's the frequency coming through. I know, grab 1K, pull it down because that's where the O lives, right? If your noise is like, ah, that's a different frequency, right? I'm going to come in somewhere around 2 to 4K and pull that down, right? That's just where they are. So you will be able to make your audio sound better because you will at least understand what they look like. The cool part for most of you, your applications like GarageBand, Logic, Audition, all of the above can use the built-in Apple EQ. The built-in Apple EQ actually has visual like analyzer. So you can kind of see wherever there's no frequencies existing. Say you have a high-pitched voice, right? So Katie's not really high-pitched, but let's just suppose this is the window that you're looking at. If nothing over here is moving, you could just take the high pass filter and just move it all the way to here because you don't have to hear any of this. So just chop it off. If you chop off frequencies that don't come out, you just save the noise. Save the noise. Bring the noise, right? If the person has a little bit tinny voice, right? Say they have a little bit of a high pitch or a twinge to their voice, you're going to see the high frequency mountain is almost pushing out of that little box. You're going to grab that and pull it down so that it doesn't, go past plus 6 or 12 dB like gain. That way the high frequencies aren't busting out. And so you can make things sound a little bit better. So the first thing you should do, just so you can get a hang of it, is literally just listen to one of your favorite songs and go in there and slide those sliders and just hear like what it's going to sound like, right?
Yeah.
Now, you also have to be fully cognizant that when your audience is going to listen in their phone, those phones do not produce bass frequencies very well.
Mm.
So you have listened to podcasts where the person has overmixed, and when they start talking, you can't barely hear them because they got unintelligible because the frequency is so low, it's kind of hard to hear the difference between the parts of the word as they're speaking, right? It just, you're like, what? And so that's when it's been poorly EQ'd. We would probably have to do an entire session on EQ to show you, but yeah, we did this for Tati with her MV7. And oh, by the way, if you happen to have an MV7 or some of its contemporaries, once you get those settings saved, you can actually save them so that should you ever have an issue, you can put it right back to where it came from.
That is
And
huge.
then the last portion of this would be the compressor, and it does exactly that. So going back to this 600 milliliter volume, we don't want anything actually touching the top, and we don't want anything actually touching the bottom. So we would take, say, a 575 milliliter bottle and stuff it in the middle, and
Mhm.
then put the signal through that. And that's compressing that. The stuff that's too loud, it's pushing it down. The stuff that's too low is pushing it up. Sorry for the noise, people, but that's exactly what it is. It's
For the most part, not
compressing,
heavy. Yeah.
right? So if you're watching this thing, the waveform, you're
Yeah.
just squeezing the top and bottom so that the lower stuff comes up and the higher stuff comes down to keep it nice and even.
Mhm. Magic. We did it. That's audio in a nutshell.
Man, that was crazy. I think my brain hurts now.
I
I think my
I'm
brain
feeling
hurts
good.
now.
I
Yes.
don't know exactly, what it is, but I'm feeling pretty confident about all of this stuff, and everything you said today just kind of adds to my layer of understanding, so I'm feeling good.
Yeah, like you don't have to know exactly how to solve it, but if you could just understand your signal flow, and I highly suggest everyone, you
Map it out.
know, map it out. If you map it out, it would make life better, right? So for instance, one of the reasons why I'm always telling people put your headphones in your microphone. If you're a USB person, put your headphone in your microphone, or
Mhm.
put it directly in your interface. Let it be the closest to your original signal as possible. Because if you turn on audio monitoring, like in the Ecamm audio monitor, it's hearing it after all the processing. So it puts a big enough gap between what you say and what you hear that it will make your head go psycho because your brain is not used to hearing your own self way later. And that's how long it takes the signal to process. Now imagine the people that have to hear you on the opposite end. Like, that's only in your room. It hasn't even left the internet yet. Like, it's still in your room and it's already enough to be off, right? So, I'm always also laughing at when people say, "Well, when my guest is on and I say something, there's a little delay between when I stop talking and the guest answer."
Well, yeah.
Uh, it's called miles.
Yeah.
Like, but whether you know this or not, there is a delay. If Katie says, "Hey, Ken, stop messing with the coffee machine," Ken's on the opposite side of the office. There is a couple milliseconds of delay between Katie's nice anger and Ken going, "Huh?" because of distance.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Oh my
super funny, but yeah.
so true. So true. Awesome. Well, we did it, and this is a topic that obviously we will continue to cover here and there. We'll probably even do another. We had done an audio workshop a couple of years ago for just Ecamm in general. We should definitely revise that and add on to it. But yeah, it isn't as hard or as scary as it seems, and I think you're totally right, Doc, in that it comes from this kind of like, well, we're not supposed to touch it. We're muggles. We're not supposed to touch this stuff. But I think it's okay to touch it. It's good if you're going to touch it to understand what it is you're doing or what you're trying to get out of it or what level. So if it should your podcast and your videos should sound their best, but that doesn't mean that you need to, be like up here in the world of sound engineering.
Yeah.
Like you
Yes.
can small steps, you can get a little bit better at it each time. You can at least know how to troubleshoot if something goes wrong or be able to kind of patiently work through it so that you don't have things like, audio being too low or, something muted that you don't understand where it's coming from or doubled audio or an echo or any of that kind of stuff. So,
You know what's funny? I just thought of something. Many people in here have imbibed a Red Bull, and many people in here have a driver's license. Neither of those two things make you Max Verstappen. So you don't have, just because you had a Red Bull and a driver's license doesn't make you an F1 driver, and you don't have to be, right?
Yep.
That's not what they're doing it for. Let them do that. You can still drive. Now you'll find out in LA next week. I'm an F1 driver.
Doc
Wait,
is here
that's
to
not
Doc
next
is
week.
here to help
That's in
out.
like 2 days. So
Yeah.
kiss your kids goodbye, just in case. No, I'm just joking. Now, East Coast driving is totally dead. West Coast drivers are slower than us. We just
Yeah,
drive quick. So you're
yes.
pretty good. Like Katie can
East
get her
Coast
move on.
drivers are real angry being on the West Coast. We're like, "Get out of the way."
Yeah.
Yeah.
I drive I'm not as bad as the people in Brooklyn, like Eden, but I mean I can get down. Okay, gang. So we're gonna roll into Q&A, but before we do that, I do want to remind you for look, I know this episode probably generated some questions, and that's absolutely cool. Please throw
Yeah.
them at us because we might need to do an audio mailbag out of this because I know you'll have some questions, right? So
Yep.
you can go to the podcast, flow.ecamm.com. It is available wherever podcast getting is got, including YouTube. If you got YouTube music because you're a YouTube premium listener, hey, guess what? We're in there. You just go in there, type in FLOW Ecamm, and then you'll see there's my face and Katie's face, and occasionally a Jared and Louise's face. Don't be scared if you see those mugs. It's us. Then, you can get your podcast there. You can send us an email at flow@ecamm.com. That's FLOW at symbol. It looks like a navel at ecamm.com. And you can send us your questions there. And yeah, just reference it in the title or something, say audio workshop or audio question. And then we can totally go back in and help you out there. Um, and oh yeah, this guy is brought to you by Descript. Now, for those of you who don't want to learn all of this crazy EQ stuff, guess what? Descript has some basic EQ built in. It has a basic compressor built in. It has something called Sound Studio. Sound Studio is like having a butler come in and just do everything for you. That's what it is. So it is nice to have that. Go and check out Descript. You can find out more at Descript.com. It is one of those tools that we all just, wish everybody had. Kind of like a
Yeah.
plumber wishes everybody had a plunger.
And just like everyone needs a plunger, everyone needs to script. Oh,
There you go.
oh,
So we'll roll into a really fast Q&A, people. So if you guys say, I want to be in a Q&A, remember the recordings happen every Tuesday at 12 p.m. noon Eastern time. And why do I have such a hard time saying that? Because I don't do time zones and I live in the far way out west. So I have to process it. Sorry, people.
it's
Anyway,
when the horn goes off in Amesbury, Massachusetts, that's when we're ready to go.
when it's ready. Yes. Thank you guys. Thank you guys. Absolutely appreciate you. Let's dive into the Q&A for our people listening at home. We'll see you next week. Flow
We'll see you
Riders
next time.
out. Okay. So
We're a couple.
Silent.
Yeah, silent. Yep.
Silent said, without physically changing my room, assuming a decent mic, my case, a condenser mic
Into a
plugged into a Scarlett. How do I get that warm, smooth radio sound? Number one, be born with elegant pipes like this. There's no software. This is just DNA. No, I'm just joking. I did radio for many years. So the warm sound, you will have part of it already because you're using a condenser mic. If you don't want to sound treat your room, here's the drum roll. You got to 86 the condenser mic normally because the condenser mics are made for studios. They're designed for that really clean, pristine environment, right? They're not expecting to have to deal with sound rejection, right? Because they're expecting to be in a sound treated room. I don't think there is a condenser mic on the planet that's designed to be in a noisy environment. So, because it doesn't have any noise rejection, by the time you get the gain set at a level where it's going to sound perfect for your voice, it's also going to pick up all the room noise. So, the reason why the SM58, SM57, SM7B, MV7. I don't know why they didn't put an S in there. Anyway, They all reject noises. The Samsung Q2U rejects noises. Even the Yeti is designed to reject noises because it's a dynamic mic, so it's not going to pick up all of that extra noise. So you might have a hard time getting what you're looking for without adding some treatment to your room. And it's not just because YouTubers want to look cool. Some of them do because they have them completely set up wrong in their room. But the reason why you have bass traps in the corners is rooms will build resonance, and that rumble comes into, because bass sounds will just keep traveling until they fade, until they can no longer have enough amplitude to keep bouncing. So they'll keep bouncing and they'll slowly lose amplitude. And as they get slow, that means the wave is doing like this. This is a low frequency wave. This is a high frequency wave. Anyway, I don't even know. I don't even know if anybody. That's a Canadian wave right there. So yes, all frequencies, as they're moving around your room, they get stuck in the corners at low amplitude because they've slowed down and now they're just bouncing around in your corner. Which is why when you go into the studio, there's always bass traps in the corner. Right? Because that's to break up those low frequency resonances that bounce off. So yes, I know nobody's other half is going to allow them to put foam all over their living room. So yeah, things like this help. Putting a towel on the table will stop the reflection from coming up. And then when you're done, just put the towel back in the closet. Nobody can see the table. So just putting a towel right here will take some of that stuff out. But yeah, you might have to go to a dynamic mic. Condensers really do require a more pristine environment. Let's see.
G. Albert has a question.
Yes, running a test.
He said,
I saw the sound meter moving, but I didn't hear anything. That's because your headphones weren't plugged into the sound source. My daughter and grandson came into the room screaming, saying they were hearing a high pitch. Why? Because something in your frequency is generating a high pitch. Like audio can't just make itself up. Like it has to come from somewhere. And the reason why you probably couldn't hear it is one, us old folks can't hear high pitch. That's the first one. Second, you probably had something where you're not listening to the audio source. Because if the sound meter is moving and you don't hear anything, your headphones are plugged in the wrong spot. Or you're something on the signal flow out of Ecamm, which is going to go into wherever you're in the Ecamm preferences, you have an output. That's what you set it to, right? So in my particular case, my output is set to the Streamer X. So any sound I expect to hear will only come out of the Streamer X. Now, I can say from the Streamer X, I can set my Mac to make it come out of my little speaker over here, which is a Apple baseball HomePod, mini pod, somebody's pod. That's because this output comes out of the USB back into the Mac, and then it goes to the Mac speakers. So for most of us, everybody in this room, you have twofold. You have one place for the sound to go into, which would be your interface, and your interface will send it back to your Mac, and your Mac will bring it to your Mac speakers. We normally want you to turn off your Mac speakers, right? So somewhere in your signal, that's it. And again, you just have to figure out signal flow because nobody can really answer that for you in a nutshell. We can just spitball until we get it because only you know how you have your signal flow set up.
True.
There we go.
There we go. I just scrolled through and I don't see any other questions. We did it.
Gangster.
But please, if you do have more questions, I'm sure they'll come up. Flow@ecamm.com or doc@ecamm.com, Katie@ecamm.com. Any of the @ecamm.com will work to find us. We're not that hard to find.
Okay, so but here's I have a question for the audience, for the people that are still hanging. Okay, put in two numbers between 1 and 10. Where you came into this with your audio level knowledge spheres and where you left. So then we know how much more we got to do. That's what I'm trying to say. So Katie, you can answer.
Oh my gosh, I'm so 10 is like feeling fantastic.
Yeah, you make it up. It's your 1 to 10.
All right. So 1 is I'm feeling terrified, can't I'll do it, and 10 feeling fantastic. So I'm next up sound engineer. I'm at an 8. I'm feeling pretty good. It might just be the day that I'm having. I have had nothing but audio issues over the last probably 10 streams that I've done. And most recently, it looks like my computer is having some kind of issue with my headphone jack. So like I assure you that if there have been audio issues, I've had them all, but I have been able to solve them and still go live and still, and still produce content across a number of different forms. And I'm proud of myself for, again, like remaining calm, following the audio path back, being able to talk through what it is that I'm seeing or hearing, being able to help other people figure out what's happening on their end. So I'm feeling good. I'm seeing a bunch of 8s too, so which is great. And Jailbird
Fantastic.
still has 6 and 7, so on the way to 8, but more than 5, which is great.
I'm going to paste something into the chat, and Katie, I will send this to you as well. Every person in this room that has a Mac should probably get one of these, just to have it on standby. I actually have one of both. I have the USB-C version and the USB-A version. They're range between the price fluctuates. It ranges between $7 and $10, and if you had a Plantronics headphone back in the day when Skype first came out, you got one somewhere floating around your house, right? Because everybody bought the headphone with the little thing when Skype first came out. And so everybody has one of these somewhere in their house. If you kept that, if not, just buy a new one. Keep this on deck, because MacBook, the headphone port eventually will get dust in it, or it'll go silent for whatever. And you're in an emergency. You don't have time to muck with it. You literally just plug this in. And just like your MV7 becomes a USB interface, it's a tiny little USB interface, right?
That's
And so the red or pink in this particular case side is for the mic, the green side is for the headphone. And all you would do is plug this in, plug your headphones in, you're back in the mix.
wow. So could I potentially dumb question. So if I buy this and I'm still using my do I have to plug a mic into it, or only can I use it just for headphones?
Use the headphones. You're just
Awesome.
going to set Ecamm, not Ecamm. You're going to set the Mac OS to be this weird. It's going to probably say something like USB audio device. That has a real dumb name, because they never name USB people. Name what it is. Okay, you really every time. Like, please. I plugged in this beautiful USB aggregate
Yeah.
1527.3. Huh? Don't
Yeah.
nobody know what that is. What you talking about, Willis? Right? So, yeah, you would set your Mac to listen to this, because that's your final output, which would be your head, right? And then your Ecamm will be just like how you have it, and it would be fine. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah.
Oh my
These are
God.
great for the emergency. Like, I need to have one of these things somewhere around me.
I just added it to the cart. I'll purchase as soon as we're off, because I definitely am gonna have some issues with this. I'll have to figure out.
Yeah, Victor said I have a few around. Anybody that bought gaming headphones, we all got these somewhere floating around the house. You just got to find them. They were savior baking. And again, there's a toggle switch on the Amazon link to pick up the A version if you have an older computer. If not, then grab yourself, the new one, and then we're in there like swimwear. Okay, gang, I have to go do a stream. So if you had a bunch of questions about Apple crap that came out yesterday, just come back at 8:00 on my stream. Then I'm come talk about it. And Paul and I are going to make the thumbnail right now. It's been that kind of week. Appreciate you guys.
See you in a couple days, Doc.
Yes, see you soon. Bye, kid.